Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. For some reason, I'm in a really good mood this morning. I don't know if you can hear, but the birds are chirping. The sun is shining. In fact, the future's so bright I have to wear shades, even though I was told I shouldn't. I should probably take them off. My friend Aria Green, hello Aria if you're watching. Some of you might know him. I think he's most famous for the fact that he's video bombed this fireside chat on a number of occasions, and no other reason than that. Hi Aria. Yeah, he said that I should take off my shades. I'm more, if people can see look into my eyes, it's more believable and it's more genuine. And I'm a genuine guy, so I'll take off my shades today. But yeah, it's a great morning. Why am I in such a good mood, I wonder? Oh, by the way, I'm also drinking today some shandy. That's a clue, because I believe shandy's from the UK, if I'm not mistaken. It's a UK drink, just for the occasion. And what's the occasion? Well, if you haven't heard, Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader, is no more. Oh, well, he's still alive. But what I mean is he is being suspended from the Labour Party. And I think this is fantastic news. Jeremy Corbyn, tainted by anti-Semitism, the whole of his leadership. Anti-Semitism in the UK Labour Party ran riot under his watch, and not only that, he participated in some himself. If you may recall, he supported not just the Palestinians over Israel and being disgusting to Israel, but he even was at a memorial for one of the Black September terrorist masterminds, and then he claimed he didn't really know what was going on, or he didn't really, he was at the graveside with wreaths and everything. I mean, you can see the receipts online. What else? I mean, there's just too many things to mention. He's been photographed at the Al-Quds rally with his Hezbollah flag as a backdrop. Yeah, Ayala, good morning to you too. Great news, absolutely. Good, I'm in a fantastic mood today. Fantastic mood. And he defended a mural which was basically of some Jewish-looking bankers with like a monopoly board or a table on top of like these slaves. And he defended it, and then he claimed ignorance when people pointed out that's really anti-Semitic, by the way. I think Ice Cube, if I'm not mistaken, has also shared that graphic as well. So time and again, Jeremy Corbyn himself is engaged in anti-Semitism. Also, by the way, he's tried to show himself that some of his best friends are Jewish. He has these pathetic attempts. He joined the Passover Seder, and he had this video where he was talking to Jews. These Jews were all part of this group called Judas, and other left-wing groups, the sort of Jews that basically say Kaddish for Hamas. I mean, really disgusting. I'll get into that in a minute. I'm going to talk a bit about that, about the sorts of Jews that he and others and his supporters like to hold up as their friends. Anyway, so Jeremy Corbyn, he's being suspended. Of course, he's not going to lay down lightly. He's not going to fall on his sword here. He's not going to do the honourable thing. He's going to fight it all the way. He put out a Facebook post saying that, yes, while he acknowledges that there are some anti-Semites in the party and he's spoken out against anti-Semitism, he's going to continue to fight anti-Semitism, he's done his whole life, blah, 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 blah. But this is politically motivated. This is a Human Rights Commission report, something along those lines. He won't accept the findings. And by the way, he's being suspended not because of the report, but because of the reaction, which I'm talking about now. His reaction was basically to undermine the report and say it's politically motivated. And the Labour Party, under the new leader, has done the right thing and wants to suspend him. So this is great news. Absolutely great news. Now, I've been watching online the reactions to the suspension, and he's got many supporters. And the people that are supporting him, if you basically, 9 times out of 10, if not all the time, if you would go to their social media postings, if they have any, you'll see that they're vehemently anti-Israel and engaged in some anti-Semitism themselves in many cases. And that's why I want to talk about a particular topic today, which I think I've mentioned in the past, but I haven't gone into in much detail. And that's when you have the phenomenon of non-Jewish people dictating to Jewish people like myself, and many of you watching, as to what is and what isn't anti-Semitism. Now, it has a term, and it's called goy-splaining, much like mansplaining. Now, I'm fully aware that the word goy, which by the way comes from the Bible and it just means nations of the world, nations, there's nothing inherently bad about that word, but I do know that it can be used in a derogatory way to describe non-Jewish people. But that's the word goy-splaining is just a phenomena, and it's a term on social media, and that's why I'm using it. I could say non-Jew explaining, but that sounds very clumsy. So to my non-Jewish friends out there, you know I love you, and it has nothing to do with that, and the word inherently is not bad either. So you have this phenomenon of non-Jewish people dictating to Jewish people what is and what isn't anti-Semitism. Now, think about how ridiculous and offensive that is to any proud Jew out there. Just like I wouldn't dare tell an African American or a black person what they should or shouldn't be offended by. Or, you know, name the minority. Why should we be treated differently? Don't dare tell us what is and what isn't Jew hatred. We know. Now, these people, by the way, in most cases, the people that dictate are themselves Jew haters. Take, for instance, Linda Sarsour. She's created at least one video and been on some panels talking about anti-Semitism, which is always the anti-Semitism of the right, never of the left. And in those panels and those videos, she will always also bring in the fact that you can criticize Israel and not be anti-Semitic. And that's the whole purpose of them defining what is and what isn't anti-Semitism. It's to basically undermine the term anti-Semitism, which basically means Jew hatred, okay? Because some people also say, oh, we're Semites as well. We're not anti-Semitic. So let's use the term Jew hatred to just take that stupid straw man out of the equation. So almost all the time, someone, mostly a non-Jewish person, will tell a Jew what is and isn't anti-Semitism. That person themselves is anti-Semitic. That's what I notice. But they're trying to basically take out of the definition of what Jew hatred is, what they're doing. And they say, it's, you know, it's so predictable. This whole thing, it's just like, I know it by heart by now. It goes along like this. Basically, if they're called a Jew hater, for very real reasons, they'll share something about the Rothschilds. I mean, we're talking about real anti-Semitic tropes. You know, talk about dual loyalty, talk about the powerful Zionist lobby, not use the word Jew necessarily, but we all know these are all dog whistles at the very least. And then they basically try to say, well, listen, you're trying to silence me by calling me anti-Semitic because all I do is criticize Israel. But you see, they're not just criticizing Israel or Israeli policy. You see, if someone criticizes Israeli policy or criticizes Israel on the way based on something specific, you don't hear me jumping up and down, and I certainly wouldn't call them anti-Semitic on that alone. I probably ignore them in most cases unless they're lying, in which case I'll debunk the lie. That is an absolute straw man to undermine those of us who are really paying attention to what Jew hatred really is. See, these people, if they're not actually disseminating anti-Semitic tropes and just using the word Zionist instead, although in many cases they actually get sloppy and use the word Jew, what they do is they aren't just criticizing Israel, they are undermining Israel's very existence, or they're employing a double standard in demonizing Israel. And that is anti-Semitism, and this is why they oppose, and why Jeremy Corbyn himself opposed the IHRA definition, working definition of what anti-Semitism is. And they oppose it because there's a clause in there which talks about basically denying Israel's existence. But they twist that clause and they say, well, we oppose it because it tries to say that criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. But that's not what it's saying. I mean, this is another trend, okay, or theme rather, with these people. And that's that they twist things and they lie. Because the truth, amongst other things, like ethics and morality, is not on their side. They're never telling the truth. And you know, there are many people out there that aren't as informed as me and many of you who are watching now. And I don't say this with any arrogance. It's just I take the time to make it my business to be informed. And they can be ensnared by this because many of these people with these talking points paint themselves as human rights activists. You know, many of the Corbynites, even Corbyn himself, paints himself as a human rights activist. But they're about human rights theoretically, but not for Jews. Sort of like Animal Farm. You know, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. So just use the word Jew in there. So this is what's going on. And this is why this is the phenomenon that I'm talking about, the goy-splaining phenomenon. So you do not get to tell a Jewish person what is and what isn't Jew hatred. Many of them say. But look at these Jews, the Jewish Voice for Peace and Code Pink and Ariel Gode, blah, 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 blah. They agree with me. And it's true. There are many Jews out there that are emboldening these non-Jewish people, many of which are anti-Semites. The non-Jewish people. And many of these Jews, and I don't want to use the term self-hating Jew because I think there's a misunderstanding about it. See, these people in most cases are not self-hating at all. They love themselves. In fact, if I was a psychologist, I'd probably, any psychologist out there would probably diagnose them as narcissists. There are many that I think about whose activities I see online who are narcissists. They love themselves. Don't have to mention any names right now. But they're not self-hating, but they show a real contempt for Judaism, like real Judaism. And what they do is they try to paint themselves as proud Jews. And many cases like Jewish Voices for Peace, Ariel Gold, Code Pink, Tikkun Olamites like Richard Silverstein, they co-opt Jewish practices, right, to bludgeon Israel over the head and say, hey, look, I'm a proud Jew. But you see, the Jewish practices that they're co-opting, first of all, many of these people are ignorant. They're not, and by the way, I'm not saying you have to be a practicing Jew to be not ignorant, okay? I'm not going to insult all people that, for one reason or another, aren't observant, like me and many others. But these people happen to be very ignorant, beyond that. So let's take, for example, If Not Now and others, the Jewish Voice for Peace. They've held these liberation seders, the Passover Seder, okay, for the Palestinians. And they basically use, now, if you think about what the Seder is when we sit down and we talk about the Exodus from Egypt. But the whole point of it is to show how God took us out of Egypt to bring us into the land of Israel and to set up our nation. It was a nation-building exercise in Israel. You see, what's really inconvenient for the haters and anti-Semites out there is the fact that Zionism, which this word again is another one that's been misused and is misunderstood, Zionism is so integral to Judaism. Look it up if you don't believe me or if you don't understand. Our whole religion, our prayer book, full of being in Jerusalem and Israel, everything. I don't want to list everything. Many of you who are non-Jews also will have been to a Jewish wedding, and you see when the groom steps on the cup. That symbolizes, it's like a commemoration of the destruction of the Jewish temples in Jerusalem. Do you understand? Everything in our religion is about Israel. Zionism isn't this separate thing. Although I do know that there are many irreligious Jews and even non-Jews out there who are Zionists. But what I'm saying is it's an integral part of Judaism. And then you have these anti-Zionists, in most cases anti-Semites, who are basically co-opting religious practices which are intrinsically showing or manifestations of this Zionism for their own anti-Zionist ends. So again, going back to these these emancipation seders, one of which, as I mentioned earlier, Jeremy Corbyn himself attended with an anti-Zionist group. So they take the Seder and they ignore all the parts which are inconvenient, which is pretty much the whole Seder, the whole theme of it. At the end of the Seder we say, Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. Of course, at their Seders they can't talk about that. And they basically interchange the Jews with the Palestinians, and the Palestinians should be set free. They basically co-opt and tokenize our religion. And these are Jewish people, along with the help of non-Jewish people. Haters. And they basically are allies with actual anti-Semites. And then these anti-Semites can say, well, listen, this isn't anti-Semitism because some of my best friends are Jewish. That's what's going on. But what you have to understand is the Jewish people that are taking part in this, they're not proud Jews. They're ignoramuses, and they're not proud of Judaism. They basically co-opt and twist Judaism for their purposes. That's not what Judaism is. It's not about something we use to feel good or advance our own agendas. Judaism is about submission to Hashem, to God. That's our whole religion. Look it up. I'm not saying anything here today that I can't back up 1,000%. It's all true. But if you look into these people, this is what you'll notice. Okay? And they twist Judaism. And these are the people that Jeremy Corbyn loves, the Jews rather, and that the anti-Semites love. So that's what I want to talk about today. I didn't have too much more to say about Jeremy Corbyn, although I will say this. Jeremy Corbyn, his son is anti-Semitic. His wife was found at a meeting once, an anti-Semitic meeting, and her excuse was she attended by mistake. Can you believe it? At least now, talking about emancipation and liberation, Jeremy Corbyn and his family can now get their Jew hatred on, okay? Accept the suspension, Jeremy. Enjoy the freedom. And you know what? There are other political parties like Hezbollah out there and Hamas that would love to take you on board. Anyway, l'chaim everyone. Have a great weekend. I know I'm going to have a great weekend. I know I'm going to have a great day. And many of my UK brothers and sisters are as well. Take care and speak to you next week.